Master Class. So Dragon Ball Super Master Class, Mastering Time. When you play competitively, you're going to be allotted a certain period, a certain amount of time. Uh, best of one is roughly 30 minutes, and best of three is like up to 60 minutes, so up to an hour per round. So it's important to make sure that when you play test, when you play your strategies and you build your decks, you understand how much time it takes you to play your turns, how much time it takes possibly will take for your opponent. So you gotta do some estimates on that. Because you definitely need to know how much time it takes for you to play your turns versus your opponent's turns. That way you know how many turns and how long it will take for you to win the game. Either through dealing damage, milling your opponent out, or winning in time. And that's the important part about mastering time, is that you want to make sure that when time runs out, you're the victor. You don't want to lose because of time, right? You rather win because of time, or you want to win within the time frame. But ultimately, the goal is obviously to win, so you don't want to be caught off guard and be in a situation where you didn't manage time well enough to make sure that you had enough time to play out your strategy, or at least you didn't make sure you had a strategy. Like, since you weren't paying attention to time, you didn't make decisions based off of it, right? You didn't make decisions that help you take advantage of how much time you have. From my personal experience, game one, when you're playing best of three, when you're playing, let's go with best of one first. Best of one, obviously 30 minutes, right? You might get 4 to 5 turns out of it. You could get more depending, like I said, on speed. The faster you are on your turn, the faster your opponent is on their turn, the better. Like I said, from my experience, since I play Hatch, and I played Hatch at a regionals not too long ago, I always did manage to get to like at most turn 8. At most turn 8. So I got that far. But typically turn 6, but I got as far as turn 8 before. So because my leader slows the game down, my opponent has very little things they can do on their turn. So there's less attacks. There's fewer decisions to make. Sometimes I'm just floodgating them out of a turn, so their turns tend to just end faster. I drop Oceanus, and they're like, okay, I'll try to attack, or I'll just end my turn. One of the two things. So because of that, you get more turns, which means you get more opportunities to swing and deal damage, and try to keep your opponent's life lower than yours, so that way you can at least win in time if you don't win by dealing them damage. You'll win in time more often than you'll win in by decking out, and more likely more than by knocking them out. But it's not impossible if you have a strategy. If you have a strategy that allows you to, take your opponent down like in a single turn. So if you have like some type of wombo combo, some type of OTK, obviously you want to take advantage of it. But there's times where you can't play your deck strategy because you're running so low on time, and it's like, yeah, I need to switch things up. Because sometimes you might have a strategy where it's like, okay, deal 4 damage, and then wait until turn 5, and then try to do the remaining 4 damage on turn 5, because you got some type of combo for that win con, right? But by the time you get to turn 3, you see that maybe you're running out of time, or once you get to turn 4, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna have much time to try to to get to turn 5 and do my win con, because more likely my opponent's going to take long on their turn. So I need to at least try to do as much damage as I can on turn 4. So focus mostly on offense, right? Instead of trying to keep some defense, like some energy and stuff like that, to defend yourself, to try to get to turn 5. You want to do the most damage on turn 4, right? Before your opponent gets to the turn 4, because they're more likely are going to start, activating a whole bunch of effects, start doing a whole bunch of attacks. Because they're going to have a lot of energy, they probably haven't awakened their leader, and let's say their leader untaps 2 energy, so that's essentially going to give them 6 energy to play with on their turn. So you got to take that into account, and there's a possibility that you won't be able to get to turn 5 and play your win con. Even if you did get to turn 5, you're running against the clock, and you might not be able to finish out the game, finish out your play, especially if there's a lot of steps to your strategy. So if you have to play certain cards in a certain order, you're not going to be able to get there. So that's why you got to pay attention to the time, keep track of it, and try to get the most out of it, right? Always try to keep your life higher than your opponent. There's times where I deliberately didn't use my blocker negate, just because I will have less life than my opponent, or I will have the same life as my opponent, and that could produce a tie, which obviously we try to avoid. But another possibility is that all they need to do is at least 1 damage afterwards, in order to have the advantage. And if time gets called after they deal me that 1 damage, then it's like, oh, screwed myself over. Could have ended up, like, you don't want to end up in a tie, but I'd rather end up in a tie than to, lose in time, right? So things like that. I always say after turn 2, you want to keep your defenses up, because you want to keep your life points up, and just take advantage of your leader and unison swings to help you chip at your opponent's life. So that way, if time does get called, you'll have the advantage by having more life, because you use less stuff to do things, right? So you focus on defense. You're playing the long game, right? So you're focusing on longevity, not on speed. And that's the important thing to keep in mind when you're playing in time. When you're playing casually and you have like all the time in the world, then you could take your time, playing your strategy however way you want. Especially if it's like a slower strategy, like a turn 5, turn 6 type of strategy. But if you're like aggro, obviously you're like more of a turn 2, turn 3 type of deck. So these are the kind of things you want to think about when you build your deck. You want to make sure that you have a time strategy, not just your win con, not just your deck's main, wombo combo, your deck's main theme. You want to incorporate at least a side deck option or a main deck option, cards to help you with time, or if you want to play a certain way. And I've done this a couple times myself, where I change the way I play, or the plays I'm going to do on a certain turn, like let's say turn 4, because I was running out of time, because I was looking at the clock. So since I saw that time was running out, it's like, okay, I can't play my strategy that will take too long to play, and it's not going to do anything other than put up a defense, which is just going to waste even more time. So I have to change from defense to offense to make up for that. So I had to make sure that I have an offensive strategy and I use my cards offensively, especially when I have high life. I'm like, okay, I got more life than my opponent, therefore I can go in on attacking my opponent and not worry too much about the clapback, because I have so much life more than my opponent. Especially if I deal them damage, I have more life than my opponent. That the high possibility of time getting called before they they even get my life lower than their life. So I made sure their life was very low, like 2 life, 1 life type stuff. So I made sure their life was so low that the possibility of them getting me down to the same amount of life they have for a tie or less than their life, that increases the chances of me of winning in time. Now, of course, they could pull out something that's triple attack. They could attack twice and use that to help them, win the game before time gets called, so that way they don't lose. But shit happens. But you still should have a strategy at least. If you don't have cards to help you with time, at least have a strategy. You could literally have in your side deck like cards to help you search out cards, or cards that have like extra effects that you could take advantage of. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole idea of I think I mentioned it. Cards that, no, I didn't mention it. Cards that have multiple effects, right? Like if you have a unison that has an auto, but also has the, the minus active main or the plus active main, right? You could try to take advantage of that, because that's 2 effects on 1 card. That will use up time. Using cards to search, like 1-drops to let you search the top card of your deck, and you grab another copy of a 1-drop that also has the effect, play that 1-drop and search again, right? Which will cause you to search, which will cause you to shuffle, and the list goes on. Ironically, I myself do have a couple of card effects that I use that do have a similar effect to that. The 4-star ball with Kid Goku Adventure Begins. That strategy or that engine does from time to time cause me to slow the game down, because I gotta go get the 4-star ball from the deck. Even if I have a 4-star ball in the drop area, I'll still go into the deck to go get one, just because I'm trying to get the whole searching thing, the whole shuffling thing, and the whole my opponent cutting the deck thing. So I'm trying to have those 3 actions happen off of 1 card effect. And that's before I even do anything else, like attacking and comboing, these types of steps, and keeping all these steps in mind. The fact that you have to declare an attack, right? Ask for a response, right? Wait for your opponent to respond. That takes time. Then choosing if you're going to combo or not, that takes time, right? Then finishing up, how much you're comboing, and then wait for your opponent to decide if they're going to combo or not. So that takes time. So all these different things, actions take time. Typically, you want to speed things up and not take too long through your actions, which is why I try to simplify things and try to make it where I don't combo. So that way it's, I'm just like, I attack with leader, no combo. They're like no negate, so I'm like no combo, and that's it. And then I just let them combo. So that way the only real actions that are happening is me attacking and them potentially out comboing or just taking the hit. And that's it. Like 3 actions at most, maybe 4 if you count the fact that they say no negate, right? So they don't. But what I'm saying is actual actions. Saying no combo, no negate. Obviously, those don't take too long to do or say. But to actually combo, to actually take damage, that does take time, because those are physical actions you have to take. Words don't take too long, but ironically, under the right conditions, they could. Sometimes I notice that even playing a card that might be obscure, like a card that no one has seen before, and they might not know the effect, or they might literally ask you the effect of the card. So then when you start reading out the card, that takes time, right? So words can take time, right? It can take time to read a card out loud to your opponent. And then, of course, your opponent has to comprehend and understand the card effect. Hopefully they don't actually look at the card after you read the card to them or told them the effect, that kind of stuff. So that kind of stuff, burns time. So you gotta keep an eye out for that. As much as you need to take advantage of time don't forget your opponent is probably going to take advantage of time. You just want to be better at it, right? You just want to be better at it than your opponent. I've done scenarios, through my play testing of time. I played certain cards and made certain actions. I even asked certain questions of my opponent. Like I'll type it up in the chat on Untap, asking if something does something a certain way, or like what does that effect do against my card on the field or whatever. And then I go from there. I do some cleanup stuff sometimes where I'll check my drop area to see if there's anything else I could do, or check to make sure I used up all my attacks for the turn. Little things like that. Look at my hand to see if there's anything, maybe a free play card I could play for free. They could potentially just give me more excuse, right? More reason, justifiable reasons to take a little bit longer to end my turn before I end it, right? And then end it, right? And and then my opponent takes a turn. And then you're just hoping that your opponent is not fast, right? They're not trying to speed through the turn, that they'll take their time drawing and then deciding what they're going to charge. The thing is, you're supposed to already know what you're going to charge before your turn even starts. That way you don't waste time trying to figure out what you're going to charge, right? It shouldn't be a surprise. You already know all the cards you have in your hand. You just drew one card. It makes no sense to try to decide what you're going to charge based off of you drawing one card. You should already know what you're going to charge. You should already made the decision of what you're going to charge from your hand before you even draw. So drawing shouldn't change that detail. But some players do have a habit of doing that. They wait until their turn to decide what they're going to charge. Whatever, right? Can't control what your opponent does and doesn't do, what your opponent can and can't understand. And some people are not good at reading. Some people are not good at comprehending and understanding, and that can happen. So you gotta take that to account. But hopefully you're a fast learner. That's always beneficial to be a fast learner. Try to play fast, especially if you have a strategy. You want to get to it sooner than later. You don't want your turn to take too long, but you also don't want your opponent's turn to take too long. That's the benefits of floodgates, cards that make it harder for your opponent to waste time doing things on their turn. You want to make the game harder for them but easier for you. So you want to slow them down so that way they have very little options, very little things they can do. So ending their turn is the most common thing that they can do on their turn, which is what you want. That way, the more turns you have, the more chance you have of dealing damage, right? And the more chance you have of dealing damage, the better chance you have of winning, because you either win in time or you win because you dealt 8 damage. So you always want to get those extra turns, but also want to make those turns matter. Very important to make them matter, because it's a numbers game. So you got to make sure that on your turn, you're dealing your opponent more damage than they dealt you. If your opponent dealt you 1 damage on their turn, you need to deal them 2 damage. That way you're always 1 life higher than they are, right? Said this before in other videos, where you want to make sure that you don't take damage turn 1, right? Take a maximum of 1 damage turn 2, take a maximum of 2 damage turn 3. You get the idea. So you want to take 1 less damage per turn is what I'm trying to say. Ideally you want to take no damage every turn, but there's sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes you have to take a hit, right? Whether you want to take a hit on purpose because it's part of your deck strategy, trying to get to 4 life on purpose so you can awaken or whatever, because you need to awaken in case you need your leaders untap 2 energy effect or draw 2 effect or whatever. Maybe you need your leader to awaken to go, to do your win con. That's fair. It's understandable. Do what you need to do. Just don't let your opponent, do more than what you want them to. Right? You gotta have control of how much damage you take. You wanna have as much control of how much time your opponent has to play the game, right? To make the decisions and the moves. So there's that. Also making sure that they're not slow playing and try to call them out on it. That kind of stuff is important. I'm not that type of person that tries to call somebody out for slow playing. Even though I be thinking it, I don't go out of my way to let them know they're slow playing. I just adapt, right? Sometimes that's what you gotta do. You gotta adapt. That's part of controlling time. Is adapting. The less time you have, the sharper, right? The more specific, the simpler your actions should be, your decisions should be. Like I said, you should already know what you're going to charge before your turn starts. You should already know what you're going to play in what order. Are you going to play a unison first, a leader, a battle card, or an extra card? Like, are you going to attack the leader first? To draw, right? With the leader's awaken side, right? Draw. Or on the front side, whatever. Point is swing, draw, before you make any other move, right? That kind of stuff. All those decisions should have been made during your opponent's turn. So when it gets to your turn, it's just a whole bunch of action. Not a whole bunch of thinking and then acting. Action, think, act, right? You shouldn't be thinking before you make a move. You should already thought of it. And all you're doing is making a move, right? So then it just, ultra instinct essentially, right? It's like you're not thinking on your turn what to do. You're just doing, right? Your body should be moving on its own on your turn. It should be a reflex. It should be automatic what you're going to do in your turn, right? Draw, charge, swing with the leader, draw, play a battle card, swing, draw, that kind of stuff. If the battle card has a draw effect, right? You get my point, like swing, no combo, right? Swing, no combo, that kind of stuff. Like, you should already know how you're going to defend. You should already know how you're going to attack, right? Like, you're not going to, turn 3, for example, you typically don't want to tap out, but let's say on turn 3, let's say turn 4. On turn 4, you don't want to drop a 15K. You want to drop a 20K, maybe a 30K, That's what you want to play on those turns. Turn 4 and up, you want to play some big heavy hitters, preferably for cheap. You don't want to spend time or energy, energy trying to play, something expensive, something where you'll tap out. You definitely don't want to spend energy on low power battle cards or anything low power. Unless it's crucial to your win condition or your deck's game plan, don't waste energy on anything less than 20K, turn 4 and above. You rather just save the energy for your negates and stuff like that, right? Your defense, than to waste it into low power attacks. Because the thing about playing a 15K on turn 4 and above is that you're going to probably have to combo just to make it relevant, because your opponent's leader is more likely going to be awakened at that time. Which means swinging with a 15K and not comboing is just going to get stopped by a 5K combo. You rather force your opponent to use 10K combo power. You want your opponent to use super combos and things of that nature, or use 2 cards per attack because you're swinging with 20Ks to their 15K leader. That's why you want 20Ks, 25, 30Ks, 40Ks, right? You want to have these high attackers out around turn 4, for example, swinging at your opponent. But you also want to keep your defenses up, so it'd be hard for them to, hit you back on a clapback, right? So you're saving your combo power for defense because you're not wasting it on offense, because you're making sure that you have lots of 20Ks in your deck, right? Early game, you're going to rely on your leader and your unison, so it doesn't matter their power per se. Your unison could be 10K or 15K. It doesn't matter that much early game. But, turn 3 and above, you want your attacks to be stronger, 20K and above. So you know, that way you don't have to combo. So that's the kind of stuff you want to keep in mind. And like I said, keep your defenses up because you want to keep your life points up. Try to play your blocker negates with energy instead of by taking life. Unless you had a play you felt you really had to make it, unless there's a battle card you really had to tap out for, or unison or whatever, and you really felt you had to tap out for it, you should keep energy up for all your negates, right? Your blocker negates, your topos, your oceanuses, violent rays, you know, all that stuff. Whatever you use, keep your energy up for that. Keep your energy up just so you can use battle cards that have 10k combo power that requires 1 energy. Using your Champazini Supreme Kai for defense, not just offense, you know, it's something else to consider. And like I said, when it comes to time, double strike like Champa E Supreme Kai, very important, right? Because you literally could be in a scenario where you're at 3 life, your opponent's at 4, and it's like, I need one of my attacks to go through so I can Champa and bring my opponent down to 2, so that way, if time gets called, which according to the clock, it's going to be called soon, I might want to be in a position where I have 1 life more than my opponent. Or tie, but obviously tie is not ideal. You want to be victorious, so especially in best of 1, so you want to double strike as much as possible. That's another thing. Best of 1, everything you swing with should deal at least 2 damage at minimum. You know, you shouldn't be doing this 1 damage per swing type thing in best of 1, right? You want whatever you're using to at least output 2+ damage, right? Ideally. Because my my Saiyan Scions, they output about 3 damage, right? I swing with the Unison, which is a 10k, bring out 2 10k skillless battle cards, has 2 more attacks, so that's potential 3 damage off of 1 card, right? Even though these are individual attacks and individual damage, right? It still adds up to 3, and it only came from 1 card. That's not including the fact that I could swing with a leader, the fact that I could swing with a battle card, you know, overrealm, right? So you want to make sure everything you're swinging with has either A, the ability to attack more than once, or B, can produce multiple attackers, or C, can just do a lot of damage for an individual swing, right? Especially best of 1. The best of 3, you can play whatever works for you, whatever works best. But in best of 1, everything should be double striking, because you only need at least at minimum, right? You should at least be able to do 6 damage. That means you just need 3 double strike attacks, right, to go through, just to give you the advantage. But you know, 4 attacks going through their double strike is 8 damage, and obviously that's the goal. But you should always have a backup plan, like winning through decking out your opponent, winning through time, which is why it's important to master time. Don't let time be your downfall, right? Don't let time be your enemy. You know, make sure you're the conqueror of time, like Hit, the conqueror of time. Make sure you improve on your decision making when it comes to defending yourself, right? Defending your life. Decisions when it comes to choosing between offense or defense, especially when it comes to time. You obviously want to use defense to help you with time management, but at the same time, you got to know when to shift from defense to offense, because that can be the difference between winning and losing. So in time. So want to keep that in mind. Not much to say, because I'll just end up repeating myself over and over again. You definitely want effects that cards that have multiple effects, battle cards, leader cards. You want to have as much to do on your turn as possible. I hate that personally, but because time rules is a thing, and we're doing best of 1 pre-side of duels, that you definitely need to take advantage of, because it's not against the rules to play a whole bunch of cards that take time to play. Search cards, cards that have an effect. Like, let's say, just even playing something where like you combo it, right? As because you're just comboing it, but then it has a drop area effect, and then you trigger the drop area effect, and then you have to take actions. Like the draw apes, for example, that right there can take time, because first you got to swing, you got to declare an attack, right? They say no negate, then you combo, then you wait to see if they combo. Let's say they don't combo, so then you have to wait for them to take the damage. So, like I said, you want to make sure that you deal. You pay attention to the time, and make sure that you don't lose out the opportunity to make sure that your life is higher than your opponent, so that you win. You want to make sure that you're. Oh yeah, I was talking about draw. I got off topic. Sorry. The draw ape thing, right? So after so you're waiting for them to take damage. Then they try to, they'll take the damage. Then you'll pay 2. Warp, right? That's an action. Drawing 2 cards, that's another action. And if you have more attacks, then go into attack. Maybe combo the cards you drew. Because like I always say, to combo defensively, not offensively. But if the idea is to take longer on your turn, then yeah, comboing offensively is a way to force your opponent to be in a position where it's like, well, I don't want to take damage because we're running out of time, and I don't want to have less life than my opponent, so let me combo to try to prevent damage, or I just don't want to lose. Let me combo. So sometimes you want to force your opponent to have to combo, right? To go into combo step, so that way it wastes more time. So even though ideally I prefer to save combo power for defense, when it comes to time, you might want to use it offensively, just so you can spend more time on your turn. And like I said, try to get as many attacks as possible. If you have a token that you made from your blocker negate, swing with it, combo, right? Just so you have, you take more time. Because like I said, the whole idea of mastering time is trying to obtain as much of it for yourself as much as possible. Take as much as you can for yourself. That way, whatever's left over, that's what your opponent gets, and you definitely want them to have less, right? So basically, it's like trying to freeze time by just the cards you play. That's why I'm using Hit as an example for this concept, because basically he inspired it in a way. The idea of him using, mastering time as part of his fighting strategy. Why not use that, that same mentality of like, all right, yeah, you want to master time. You want to make sure that time is on your side, not against you. You want time to be your friend, not your enemy, right? So let's see. And that'll be the end of the video.